Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. I'm Tulio Siragusa, broadcasting from Southern California. Today is Wednesday, October 6th, 2021. Joining me are Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico. Hey, guys, welcome back.
Hello.
And of course, our guest is Joel Cumming, who's the CTO at Skywatch. Welcome to the show, Joel. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So not too long ago, we had a guest that was talking about how financial wealth management companies historically have access to like satellite data to look on retailers to match up their forecast to reality and things of that sort, which helps them plan out investments. And they've democratized that service. And one of the things they announced on our show was the ability to look at like Tesla cars coming out of the production line to count how many cars are coming out, actually having a camera keeping an eye on that. So it was interesting to learn the uses of watching things in terms of how that can be used for financial services. Today, we're going to talk to Joel about what if we could see everything on Earth? What can we do with that? But before we go into the topic, let's get to know Joel a little bit. Please introduce yourself to the audience and welcome again to Dojo Live.
Yeah, thanks, Tulio. Appreciate it. So my background, we'll keep it brief, but I've always been a data guy, and I started off at a university building web applications, and quickly learned that I love data. And I started my first real hardcore data job when I started working at BlackBerry. If you remember that company from a while ago, it was one of Canada's hottest startups, and was fortunate enough to work there sort of as the rocket ship was accelerating, and was there for 9 years. Got to really experience a lot of fun things and get career opportunities you wouldn't at a lot of places. And ended up leading a team. In the end, I was kind of leading a team of data scientists and data engineers and an advanced analytics and big data team, where we got to really leverage a lot of what BlackBerry infrastructure had to offer. And so, we did things like we built the recommendation engine for the App Store in BlackBerry. We also could leverage things like understanding your social network. The BlackBerry Messenger was pretty popular in a lot of countries. We knew a number of other things about you, and we tried to leverage all those for personalization. So at big companies like Yahoo and Google, they need to monetize data through advertising and expose a lot of that personal information. BlackBerry was all about privacy and security, so we kept that all very tightly controlled and secure, but used it to try and leverage personalization within the platform. So had a lot of fun doing that at BlackBerry. And as most people probably know, the BlackBerry curve went down after the iPhone really picked up steam.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed at BlackBerry for a little while after that, but then joined a unicorn startup in the region. So I'm in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, which is about, for those who aren't familiar, which is about an hour west of Toronto. So we have a great tech scene here, and so joined a unicorn startup that did chat messaging. So at BlackBerry, I worked in the BBM organization near the end of my time there, but started working at Kik, which is a chat app that was wildly popular with US teens. Spent some time there. When I left BlackBerry, I was leading a large team of about 40 people, data scientists, data engineers. When I went to Kik, I was a team of one. And so I was given a petabyte of data, logs, the first day, and said, okay, so in a week, can you tell me why people leave Kik? Can you tell me why people churn? That's what our CEO tasked me with. And so I had never used cloud services before. I had to spin up, a Hadoop cluster and build a database. And I didn't quite have the full answer by the end of that week. But over my time at Kik, we built up a team there of data scientists and data engineers. We did some really interesting natural language processing with chatbots and some really cool prediction of a lot of the different components of behavior on Kik as well. Again, looking at trying to how we personalize the experience for them. So, my time at Kik, I was exposed to a lot of other companies in the area. And one that sort of caught my eye really early was this company called Skywatch. And Skywatch was looking to build a platform to make Earth observation simple for everyone. And when I started talking to the founders, and it was very early on, they had just raised their seed round. So when they talked to the founders, I was realizing it's actually a data engineering problem that the company's trying to solve. And so for me, being a data engineer at heart, it was really appealing. The company was trying to take all this satellite imagery that was really hard to use and make it really simple. And if you're familiar with data science and data engineering, one of the things that at least data engineers like to say is that, data engineers drive the ball down to the 5-yard line, to use, an American football reference. They like to drive the ball down to the 5-yard line, and then the data scientists score the touchdown. So all the work is in the data prep, and then the data science is just sort of the cherry on top. So this company was really trying to do
the glory.
Anybody else have a vision of a data science going, I'm open, pass me the ball?
Yeah,
all
here's
right.
your 3 lines of code, and
I still miss the physical keyboard of BlackBerry. I'm not gonna lie, I miss that every day. I wish somehow they'd come back, but modernized, obviously. All right, so that's an interesting background.
I'm a bit younger. That's the only thing about BlackBerry I can remember. I never got to use one. I just saw like the older rich guys using them.
Oh man, I was like, you could get really fast with those things. It was awesome. All right, so let's just to recap real quick. Skywatch, give us the elevator pitch. What is it? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so our job is to make Earth observation data simple for everyone. And we have 2 products. The one that is really focused on the demand side of the market. So if you're an application developer and you're trying to include Earth observation in your application, maybe you work in an insurance company, maybe you work at a hedge fund, maybe you're building an application that's precision agriculture and you're trying to sell that to farmers. That's our target market. Today, if those companies are trying to get satellite imagery, it's really, really hard. You would have to call up a satellite company and lots of times commit to a large minimum order size. And then believe it or not, the way you order data is generally through the phone or through an email or a PDF order form. And then it's delivered typically on an FTP server, days or weeks or even months later. And so this is the paradigm in which commercial Earth observation data has operated for the past about 30 years, largely because governments are the big customers for this data. And what we see is a large opportunity for smaller startups, even larger enterprises who've been leveraging Earth observation data, some that even haven't, to build machine-to-machine integrations with an API so that a system can request what we call an area of interest, the area that you care about. Maybe it's a parking lot or maybe it's a farm. They can request that programmatically and get data back programmatically. So if I'm in an insurance company, I can get a before and after very easily through my application.
All right, we're going to go right into all that detail. Just hold off. We want to learn the use cases for this. Let's introduce the topic of the conversation today and to kick that off. Carlos, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tulio. So in case you have ever wondered what the Earth could look like, every single day, if you could see everything on Earth every single day, a lot of us might be wondering, what would I build? So that's the question we're going to be answering today. The topic is, why would you build if you could see everything on Earth every single day? So that's the topic as chosen by our guest. Joe, I'd like to ask you, why did you choose this particular topic for today's conversation, and why did you feel it was relevant for today's day and age? Thank you.
Yeah. So where we're moving to is a world where it's getting really inexpensive for companies to launch satellites in a relative sense anyway. Satellites used to be the size of school buses. Now they're the size of shoeboxes. It used to cost a huge amount of money to store data. It used to in the 90s, it was $10,000 a gigabyte per year. Now it's less than 2 cents per gigabyte per year. And the components that go in satellites, you can actually put mobile phone components now in satellites. So all of these things are combining to make Earth observation something that is accessible to startups to be able to launch your own satellite. So we're seeing a tremendous amount of investment from the venture capital community. We've got venture capital from traditional players in the space industry, Space Capital being one of them, one of our angel investors or seed investors, but other Silicon Valley and Toronto-based investors have invested in us that are more typical in other consumer-based investments. So the combination of all of these things is making this world a place where now you can see the things that are happening around you. You can see that things that are happening in other countries. You can monitor agricultural production en masse at a country level, or you can measure it at a very micro level on a particular farm. You can measure things like you can monitor construction projects. You can help with disaster relief. So, you know, if a hurricane strikes in an area that's not very accessible, like Hurricane Dorian when it hit the Bahamas, we were involved with, being able to provide images to relief agencies who are working there is hugely valuable. So a ton of different use cases. Generally, they involve lowering the costs for the people who are doing, you know, activities today. You know, an example of that would be the oil and gas industry. Oil and gas typically is regulated. You need to observe your pipelines from overhead on a regular basis, every couple weeks or every month. Companies spend $30 million a year on helicopters and pilots to do this. Well, you can do it with Earth observation data, and you can do it for, you know, 75% less cost. So those are the use cases we really are excited about, the ones where people can reduce their costs and become far more efficient with the ability to see everything that's going on Earth every day.
Joel, does this technology, your solution, Skywatch specifically, does this mean that for me as the little guy, let's call it the layman or the tech entrepreneur wannabe, that I have this great idea that I want to, you know, I want to build the next Uber or whatever that requires your a technology just like the one you're offering? Does this mean that you can make it accessible for me, you know, for the little guy, the tech entrepreneur who might want to get into this space, or is it something else, or do I need to be bigger or build first a company and then look at you? So where do we stand here from here as it pertains to the little guy who wants to be a tech entrepreneur and purchase this technology?
Yeah, no, we look for the little guy that we believe is going to be successful, and we can help them be successful. That doesn't mean we exclude the large companies either. But as I mentioned before, you know, if you wanted to buy a satellite image from a large company, you're probably going to pay about $5,000 for that. And from our platform, it's a pay-as-you-go platform. So when you log in, you know, you put your credit card in, and you can buy data for as little as, you know, $2.50 per square kilometer. So, and there's no, you know, it's a 1 square kilometer minimum for most of our data. So you can get started with a very small investment and kind of prove your hypothesis, but there's no massive investment required. So certainly the little guys are, and, you know, testing their hypothesis on their startup idea is something that we see a lot.
I see. Thank you.
So just to break this down a little
okay.
bit, I see the environmental potential for this, for government agencies to look at various things happening out there to predict potential support or services or what have you. With commercial, like let's take a retail thinking about opening or a major retailer or even a smaller retailer thinking about opening a new store. How would they use this information? Would they look at like traffic pattern, how many people are in a particular street at a given time, to see if there's enough traffic that would warrant opening a store in that particular area? How are some of these use cases being utilized for commercial purposes? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, sure. So what's really effective with satellite imagery is anything that you want to monitor over time. So if you're looking for kind of a one-time shot, you know, you can go to Google Maps or Google Earth and get generally, you know, a good impression, you know, as a one-time lay of the land. So you don't really need up-to-date satellite imagery in most cases for those kind of situations. Where we excel is in time series. So, you know, you talked about some people that were democratizing data about the Tesla factory. You know, we do have customers that have distribution, you know, large online retailers that have distribution facilities where they want to optimize their distribution, you know, their distribution chains. And so they're looking at time series over a number of their different facilities that they can try and optimize the flow in some of those. For retail, you know, one of the use cases that's been written about a fair amount, if you Google this, you'll see lots of the examples, but is counting cars in parking lots of retailers. So there was a write-up a couple of years ago about JCPenney. You know, a company predicted the decline in revenues of JCPenney by counting cars in parking lots over time with them, and you know that correlated to a decline in sales with JCPenney. So those are the kind of use cases that are great for us. The interesting thing about satellite imagery is we all have a misconception about it. I did before I started at Skywatch. I knew nothing about Earth observation before I came to Skywatch. We have this feeling like satellites are always watching us. They can read the fine prints on our newspaper, and they're always out there. But the reality is, you know, there's some military satellites that I won't comment on what their capabilities are. We don't use those in our platform, but the commercial ones have a maximum kind of resolution that they're allowed to move to. 25 centimeters is the best. So 1 pixel equals 25 centimeters. So you're not going to read a newspaper. You can imagine that if it's just 1 pixel wide. But also, the challenge with a lot of these, the supply is you have to order the imagery for it to be made available. It's expensive to downlink it. So there's not satellites always watching. There's satellites that are watching when there's an order placed for them. And that's actually not all that frequently. So looking back in an archive, you don't generally see a lot of consistent coverage. You need to actually proactively, in the industry, we call it tasking. You have to task a satellite so that it'll take an image every week or every month or whatever your cadence is.
Very targeted.
So that's something, very targeted. And that's something that's, again, is not an easy thing. If you're new to the industry, you know nothing about it, how do you set up tasking on a satellite or multiple satellites, especially when we're an aggregator?
So we all have this collective sigh of relief, we think, at least on the commercial satellites. Who knows, like you said, about the government satellites. I wanted to go back to distinguish between commercial and retail. I couldn't help but notice the types of applications you chose to include in your tagline. So you're talking about precision agriculture, insurance, disaster response, oil and gas, infrastructure. Most of this, it seems to me, has a kind of altruistic focus, right? Rather than let's get rich, it's how can we benefit humanity? Is that intentional with Skywatch and sort of your mission and who you are and what you're about?
Yeah, part of our mission is definitely to make the world a better place. And it's something that really resonates with our employees. We also have a principle at our company that we don't sell to the military. We don't sell anything that would be top secret or that is going to be used to harm people. So those are values that our company has that are part of our ethos. And some of what you say is absolutely true. Like there's a whole ton of advantages. For example, in agriculture, there's a strong correlation with food insecurity to political unrest in sub-Saharan Africa. So if you can predict that there's going to be a food shortage in Africa, the government can proactively supply aid and potentially, prevent any political unrest in that area. So that's a large benefit that, at the same time, we can't just sit back and be, if we're a not-for-profit and we were doing this all through donations or through grants, that's not a very sustainable business. So we believe having a sustainable commercial business allows us to provide some of these other pro bono kind of things, like for example, the Hurricane Dorian, when we were supplying data to folks on the ground in rescue efforts, we're able to do that because we have a successful commercial model as well.
Nice.
That's great. Thank you.
Joel, we're obviously discussing the massive opportunities, as you mentioned in your tagline, for applications, things like insurance, agriculture, oil, gas, all these things. So, however, despite the positive side of what you can contribute to humanity in these areas, I mean, I gotta mention this because I have seen it personally. You might find every now and then, fearmongers, people who are ready to dust off their tinfoil caps. What would you say to them? Like, take it easy, don't worry about it. There's nothing really to worry about, just in case, and so they can go and mind their own business.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly people that are going to have extreme opinions, but in terms of Earth observation, it really depends a lot on the use case. And like I mentioned, if 30 centimeter data is 25 centimeter is the maximum that's allowable, but in a lot of cases, the data, so what we would call medium resolution data is actually 3 to 5 meters per pixel. So you can imagine 5 meters per pixel is, you're really not going to see anything that's personally identifiable. You're not going to be able to identify cars. Even at 30 centimeters, the best resolution you can get, 25 centimeters, you can see windshields on cars and those kinds of things. You can see a dot as a person, but there's very little that could personally identify people. So, I try and allay their fears because we've all seen Mission Impossible and, the drone photos and some of the other imagery that President Trump leaked.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So the commercial data isn't that good, unfortunately. And this is some of the misconceptions that are challenging sometimes for our commercial customers. When they come in, they know nothing about Earth observation. They think this is what they're going to get, and we have to reset those a little bit.
Absolutely,
They're watching.
absolutely.
They're watching.
Yeah. The eye in the sky.
Yeah,
Kim,
I
had
had
a question,
in
Kim.
mind the old Will Smith movie from the 90s. I can't remember what it's called though. Anyway, not important. I
iRobot.
wanted to know about the data. No. It was long before that. Gene Hackman's in it. Whatever. I'm a movie buff today. It's fine. So I wanted to know about numbers. So we are talking. Data is your thing. When we're doing this Earth observation, how much information are you actually processing, and what is necessary for that to happen?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the basic units. When you receive a satellite image, generally they're in what's what's called a product in the industry. So it's a relatively large picture you can think of, and that is in the order of many gigabytes. It can range from kind of 2 to 12 gigabytes, but those are just pieces of what's collected by a satellite provider. Different providers have different techniques. So I mentioned a high resolution provider is only going to take images if they have orders for them. Some of the medium resolution providers actually take images of everything on Earth every day. And in those cases, they're capturing in the order of about 50 terabytes a day in data. And that's a lot when you add it up over the multiple years a constellation would be in operation. And so, that's a huge amount of data. So, Skywatch, I mentioned we have an API that aggregates the world's satellite imagery. We also have a product for satellite companies. So if you're a satellite operator and you want to monetize your data and you want to manage it for the lowest cost of storage and be able to sell it through sort of your own storefront, your boutique storefront, we have a product for them as well. And yeah, that's where you get into the multi petabytes of data that are, require processing and transformation to be able to be normalized and feed into these predictive models that a lot of people use in their applications.
Okay, Joel. Okay, it's time for the truth. How do you get access to the satellites? Come on, tell us. We want to know.
Well, it's trade secret. Sorry, can't share it. No, I'm just kidding. It's we have great partners. We partner with people like with Planet, with Airbus. We partner with some companies in Asia, like in South Korea with the ComSat constellation, in China with the TripleSat constellation. We also have access to a lot of open data, and so everybody has access to this as well. Sometimes it's harder to get, harder to use, but we use data from the European Space Agency, from NASA as well, and we've had a number of projects with the Canadian Space Agency as well. So many countries have open data programs that are very successful. That data tends to be much lower resolution, still very useful for climate change analysis and research, not as useful when you're getting into kind of those levels where you're looking at parking lots or oil and gas pipelines or change detection.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever entertained the thought of changing your last name to Musk and launch your own?
Yeah, it's a question we get a lot, actually. But we're fortunate to have lots of partners that are great, and so being an aggregator, it does change things if you launch your own constellation. So not something we're planning on.
Thank you.
That's really
Okay,
refreshing.
guys,
I had no idea
you.
that there was open access to European or NASA data. I really like that. Tax dollars at work.
That's right.
By the way, I remember the name of the movie. It's called Enemy of the State. That one.
Yes.
That's it. But there's a lot of terrestrial camera and image access as well these days. That whether it's traffic or even on top of buildings, some of it is private, some of it is government. Are those accessible to this kind of application, or are they closed?
Yeah, not through us, not through us, but there is a huge opportunity for data fusion, sort of a generic term, I think, for what you're referring to. And it's not just other imagery or video; it's other IoT sensors. So if you look at some of the most advanced farms, precision farming, they have soil sensors, they have other sensors in the air. Then they also use satellite imagery or aerial imagery to be collected to measure growth and potential disease and those kinds of things. So the long term, what we believe with satellite imagery is before too much longer, in the next 3 to 5 years, people don't actually want the images. They want the data that comes from the images. So if you think about a farmer, what you can do with Earth observation data is you can measure actually the reflectance of chlorophyll in a plant. So you can determine which areas of your farm are growing well and which aren't growing well. And what you can do with that data is only fertilize the places that need it. So most farmers who use this save about 30% in their fertilizer costs every year. But combine that with a lot of other data, and now you can start to get some huge benefits from it. So data fusion is going to be a huge opportunity for us. Just cracking this nut with Earth observation is a big enough problem for us right now. So that's where we're focused.
Yeah. So it would put time to fertilize, time to crop rotate, time to let the field rest. Kind of.
That's right. It's just the number. It's just
to your hunch.
That's right. Feeding it into a tractor, right? So the tractor can autonomously fertilize. That you don't need to see an image. You just need to have the data tell the tractor that this is where you need to go, and then that's ultimately where this is all going to go.
That's amazing. I'm a son of a farmer, and we had huge farms, and it was all my dad. It was like that passed down generation to generation knowledge, and like Kim said, it was mostly based on gut or some kind of scientific approach. But this is amazing that today you have access to this that can automate all that. Certainly, and with a growing population, we need all the technology we can get to keep up with the pace and the needs of people. We're coming up on time, but we would not do justice to our show if we didn't talk a little bit about the company itself and the culture at Skywatch. What kind of people come work for you and why?
Yeah, we've got a great team. We've got folks, we've grown a lot over the pandemic. So we just announced our Series B. We raised 17 million US in our Series B. We announced that early in the summer. So during the pandemic, we've more than doubled our team size, and we've done that with hiring people from all over the place. We love diversity. So we've got team members in Brazil. We've got team members. We had one start this week in Peru. We've got team members in the US, and as well as in Nigeria and Kenya, and all across Canada. So we're a Canadian company. We have values and principles up on our wall, things like empathy and simplicity and dependability that relate to both our products and the people that we look for to come work at our company. But we're really fortunate to have a team that really cares about each other, and the culture is super important to us. We want to have people who are empathetic and humble, but also will help each other and are unselfish. So we're really excited about our team and hiring.
Awesome. So is that something that came out of the pandemic, working remote, or was that just something you guys had set up to begin with? Just curious to see if that had any influence on the decision to have globally distributed remote teams.
Yeah, our policy before the pandemic was we would hire remote people, but they had to have had a remote job before us. So we weren't going to teach them how to be a remote employee. But now the entire world has been a remote employee, so everybody qualifies,
Right. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up on time. You guys have some fun.
I do have one question. Kenya and Nigeria. I've actually been there to Kenya, not Nigeria. Loved it. Why? Like, what type of operations are coming out of that area of the world? I'm fascinated. It's not something we hear often.
Yeah, those are remote employees, so we don't have an office there. We have an office in Waterloo. We have a lot of employees in the Waterloo region, so Toronto as well. But yeah, we have remote employees in those two countries. So just looking for the best talent in the world and being able to harness that with our team.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Well, we're up on time, and it's been a pleasure to have you with us as a guest. So much to learn, guys. That's why we love doing this show. We learn new stuff. It's like,
absolutely.
Why read a Gartner report? You could just watch Dojo Live and find out exactly what's going on and what's coming up by the people making it.
Exactly.
Shakers.
Remember
Gartner down, just making a reference to how you get that intelligence. We have that
putting them down. You're
right
lifting
here.
us up.
Exactly. Thanks for being with us. Stay with us as we go off the air in just a minute. Carlos, we got one more show tomorrow, right?
That is correct, Julio. And that will be with Jesse Solomon, the co-founder of Mickey Trading, commodities trading platform. And the topic, as you can predictably, you can imagine that it'll be commodities and technologies, bringing an antiquated industry online. That's what we have for tomorrow right here on Dojo Live at 12 p.m. Pacific. So folks, join us. Don't miss it. And remember, be safe.
Be safe.
Be safe.